Hey guys, Sleepy J here, pregame.com. Going to go ahead and continue our NFL team previews. Have Mackenzie River on the podcast for you guys today. You guys know where to find Mackenzie and I at pregame.com. Team, we're going to go ahead and preview today Las Vegas Raiders, and we're going to go ahead and look at them from a win total perspective. Current total right now for the Raiders on the season, 6.5 wins. We have like minus 130 to the under. Mac, you're out there in Las Vegas. You kind of know the pulse right now with this Raiders team. How's the crowd out there in Vegas? How are they feeling about the Raiders coming into this year?
Something about the Raiders crowd. They like all the events of the year, whether it's the preseason or whatnot. So the fact that the Raiders have a plus, I think, 38-point margin in the preseason, it has fans out here excited. It has fans out in LA excited. The whole Raiders nation seems to be excited, unlike the Vegas betting market, which has done nothing but tick down the Raiders' odds so far this offseason.
I'm a little surprised that the Raiders have actually come down a little bit. You know, the one thing about Las Vegas is that everything that they do has an entertainment value to it. And I felt like, when the Raiders came to town, that it was just an entertaining type of thing. It wasn't necessarily just a football game. Like there was entertainment
Oh,
involved.
no doubt.
People were excited for it, and I think that they still are, excited for this Las Vegas Raiders team. Let's go ahead and let's talk about this team right now. Let's look at the schedule first. I think the schedule is going to be tough this year for them. I have them right now with the 30th strength of schedule. That's not easy. So you're talking, third hardest schedule in the league. They're going to have 9 home games. They're going to have 8 road games. They have 5 primetime games this year, and I think this is a benefit for them. They have 4 of those primetime games at home. So I think that that's good. There's that entertainment type of thing that we're talking about. And the one primetime game that they do get on the road, it's against Detroit. And, we never know what we're going to get from Detroit, year to year, week to week. So I think the primetime games are actually in favor here of Las Vegas. They do have some tough games, though, and there's a real tough stretch here later on in the year, Mac, when they play against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 12. But then it's followed by a bye, and then it's another home game. I could see maybe a couple winnable games there during that tough stretch. When I look at this schedule here, Mac, I see 3 winnable road games on the schedule for the Raiders, probably against the Broncos, maybe the Bears, maybe the Colts. Home gimme type of games, you have the Broncos again, you have the Steelers, Packers, Patriots, Giants. On paper, when I look at this team schedule, it looks like it's going to be an all-out war pretty much every week for this team. And there's a lot of games that I see where they can build confidence or actually lose quite a bit. I think as far as like guaranteed losses go, I see maybe like 3 or 4. Obviously at Kansas City, at Buffalo, at Miami, that's not going to be easy. They have to play on the road again here at the Chargers. That's not going to be easy as well. As far as like anticipated type of losses, I would suspect that those are probably 4. Overall, the schedule is pretty tough, but the way it sets up, I give the Raiders hope, but I think that they're going to have to knock out some very important wins that could build them some motivation. And I think, honestly, Mac, it starts in week 1 against Denver. If they can beat Denver in week 1, I think that gives them hope because the next week after that, it's not going to get any easier. I think they play Buffalo in like week 2. So they have to win week 1. I think that's really important for them in order to get over 6.5. I mean, 6.5 looks low, but it's not an easy schedule. But there are some wins, there are some definite losses, but they got to stay with it. They can't break down, or this whole season can unravel.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think you look at the win totals, and they're the 5th hardest schedule. They got to play the Chiefs and Chargers and Broncos. They have a very tough division, and they got to play the AFC East, which has obviously gotten tougher with the Dolphins' rise and Aaron Rodgers getting there. But I actually agree with your number that they're the 2nd hardest schedule because you mentioned the 9 home games for the AFC this year. I would make the argument that that means maybe the least, maybe outside of the Chargers, means the least for the Raiders, who are going to have a lot of Pittsburgh fans on September 24th in Vegas. I'm sure somebody's booking that trip right now. Same thing with the Packers on October 9th. So I don't think of all the teams that their home field advantage is very substantial at all. You look since they've been in Vegas, they have been better uh, at home versus on the road, but not by much. You know, -2.5 at home, straight up margin versus -5. That's a 2.5 point gap. That's 1.25 points either side. That's like half the home field advantage that you would expect from the average team. So I agree with your number. I think they actually, I lean towards the over because this is McDaniel's like make or break year, in my opinion. I mean, he's never had a winning year. You can't really say that for 4 years that's the appropriate to continue very much longer. So I lean towards the over, but I get why the Vegas market has said in March you're going to win 7.5 games, and now it's closer to 6. Um, I just look at their opponents. I don't really see a lot of wins on their schedule. But you mentioned Broncos. Can they win at Denver? I mean, that's a big game for Sean Payton to start off his career in Denver. And the Broncos at home in week 1 are just since the 80s. Since before that, they don't lose at week 1. They're 17-4 just in home openers since 1989 as far as this database goes. I mean, they're plus 165 on the money line. They're plus 4 at most places, plus 4.5 in some spots. Uh, how much of a chance do you give them in week 1?
I would take that +4 in a heartbeat. Right now, I'm starting to sour a little bit on the Broncos. I think overall, when the team started out training camp, that they had a half decent team, but the wide receiver core has been absolutely decimated. Not only have they lost their number 3 and number 4 wide receiver, they're done for the year. Jerry Judy just went down. He has a hamstring issue. I'm projecting he's probably going to miss 2, 3, 4 weeks. I do not think he's playing week 1. So who do you have left? I mean, you have Cortland Sutton out there. You have a tight end and Dolchich out there. And you have a running back that's coming off of, I think he had an ACL, MCL tear from last year in Williams. So it's a lot of moving parts right now on offense. They're going to have to come up with some type of a game plan. And based on, and look, I don't mind Russell Wilson. I think he's a good quarterback, but I think you do have to raise a little bit of a red flag with the way that he looked last year. Now, look, it was his first year. You're bringing in a new coach. A coach is supposed to help him and help this offense. But when you don't have a wide receiver core to go ahead and start out the year, like how motivated are you to go ahead and go out there and get that game, going? So I think they're going to struggle here a little bit, at least on offense. And that was one of the issues that they had last year was, they struggled on offense. And that was when they had a healthy team. This team's coming in the year not healthy. And like I said, like the Raiders have to have some games circled. Like we can win this one, we can win that one, we can win this one. This has to be a game right now that they're circling more than a couple times now because Judy's important. He's one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver on that team. So I give the Raiders a big chance here in week 1. And I think this is a game where offensively they could probably outscore Denver.
Yeah, I was not very optimistic on Denver last year. I thought 10 was probably the worst Vegas total put up on the board with a new quarterback, and they're just a lot less talented than they were. I mean, they've just lost attrition wise a lot of the pieces that were going to make them, special. That Russell Wilson was going to be the final piece. Now he's got to be arguably more than just the final piece. He's got to be the difference maker. And he wasn't that last year, and the year before that in Seattle. In 3 games, Geno Smith and played just as good as him, if not better. So maybe Russell Wilson, at this point in his career, maybe he should have got an MVP vote in 2016 that he didn't. But in 2023, he's not a guy that I think will finish the season as a top 10 quarterback. So I think we'll see that soon. So yeah, I think the Raiders that could be upset potential.
I think the one thing that worries me about Denver going into week 1 there, Mac, is that they could become a one-dimensional offense before the season even starts. And when you're plugging in, a new guy here and a new guy there and another new guy, it's like, well, like what do you do? Like how do you expand the playbook to go out there and be able to play 4 quarters of football? At some point I think they'll be one-dimensional, and that's kind of the downside for this Raiders team is their defense. But if their defense doesn't have to defend the entire field and all these players, then it just makes their job, so much easier. I actually like this Raiders offense. I don't think it's all that bad. I like Jimmy G. I think that him stepping in here is actually I don't want to say it's a downgrade. I don't want to say it's an upgrade. I pretty much say it's neutral to Carr. I think he actually got shafted in San Francisco. I think they held on to him for way too long, to go ahead and just benefit San Francisco. I think Jimmy G would have been better off not on that team with the whole Trey Lance situation that was going on. I thought they probably should have shipped him out a little bit earlier. I think he has something to prove here. That's just kind of the way that I feel. No, he's shown that he can go ahead and compete in some big games and win some of those big games. And I know that, at times he makes mistakes there, Mac, and he'll cost his team the games. And I'm sure he's, giving you fits over all the years. But I think that it's kind of just getting Jimmy G to a point to where this team can go ahead and pull out a couple games, that he'll be able to go ahead and do that. He is one of the best wide receivers in the league with Adams. If that's like his go-to guy, kind of if Jimmy G treats Adams the same way that Rodgers did, like that was my guy, I'm gonna pepper him with 14, 15 targets a game. I think the Raiders will be able to move the chains. Now, Josh Jacobs kind of still up in the air. He's not going to go ahead and sign that franchise tag just as of yet, but it seems to, at least from the reports that I've read, that the Raiders are expecting him to go ahead and show up and potentially play. I don't know if that's going to happen. They're back up in Zamir White. My opinion, I think he starts out the year. I think he's going to be the lead running back. I think he's going to be their number one to start out. He's nothing really better than average. So, I mean, those are really the two key pieces that need to be on the field with Jimmy G. And it's just, you need Josh Jacobs out there. I mean, he led the team in rushing last year. So I think he's sitting out right now and he's not signing that tag for a reason. He wants to be paid. So that could be a little bit of an issue. But imagine like if this guy's sitting out right now, Mac, like, and they're thinking, hey, we have one of the best, if not the best running back in the league, and he's not there. And then all of a sudden he shows up. Like that's a big spark before week one against a team who you probably have, circled a couple times. So I think offensively they come into the year if Josh Jacobs is there, maybe a little bit of a danger.
Yeah, it's a big if. I really don't know which way that's going to fall. So there's been conflicting reports. I heard one report that said he might not be there till week one, but he will definitely be there week one. And then probably Jacob's team said, no, that's not true. Most people want to be paid. Las Vegas is a beautiful city. I hope he spends the fall here playing football. But if you think about the offense in general, it's not going to come down to whether Josh Jacobs is there. It's going to come down to Jimmy G. And in my opinion, it's going to come down to Jimmy G's health. And he had some flashes from Aiden Russell, is it, the backup quarterback in the preseason? So it looks like he might be able to play a game or two. But generally, you want your starting quarterback out there. And that's Jimmy G's problem. That's Jimmy G's problem. Allow me to retort your mistreated Jimmy G in San Francisco. Um, First of all, I made 120 million. Second of all, you said, oh, they're just doing what's best for the 49ers and not necessarily what's best for Jimmy G. They owe it to the other 52 guys and all the training staff and the people selling peanuts in the stands to do what's best for the 49ers. Yes, they did what's best for the 49ers. And for a long time, that was play Jimmy G. He was very good in San Francisco. If you look at playoffs and regular season, he gets dinged in the playoffs, but he's still up here. Adjusted EPA, Patrick Mahomes, number one. This is since 2018, Jimmy G's first year as a starter. Drew Brees, number two. Philip Rivers, number three. Jimmy Garoppolo, number four. Aaron Rodgers, number five. Tom Brady, number six. Now, EPA is in everything. Situational play, i.e., playoffs, i.e., fourth quarters, third down in Super Bowl. Those plays matter more than some other plays, and even though if they're calculated the same by EPA. But play by play, efficiency wise, finding the right guy, getting the ball out of your hands, minimizing sacks. Does have some ridiculous turnovers in his career that just seem inexplicable, but in general, he's not a high turnover guy. He's been very effective. However, since he started in 2018, here are his game totals. 3 games in 2018 tore his ACL, making a very ill-advised run around a defensive end trying to get an extra yard. Tore his ACL. 2019, he played all 16 games, played every game of the playoffs. They made the Super Bowl. 2020, 6 games, then he was out. 2021, he played 15 games. He did miss one game. He did get injured. He was playing apparently in the NFC Championship game with a elbow injury or finger injury that needed immediate surgery. That's a big thing with Jimmy G. He's gotten a surgery after almost every season, including this past one. Because last year he came in as the backup quarterback after Trey Lance got hurt, and he himself had a foot injury that required off-season surgery. There was some speculation that he chose not to play in the NFC Championship game, but pretty confident that you don't get surgery unless there's something actually wrong with you. So if Jimmy G's out there, he's worked with Josh McDaniels before. I don't expect him, without the same weapons that he had in San Francisco, to be the fourth best quarterback in the league on an EPA basis, the way he has been since 2018. But I expect him to be good. He's always been good out of Eastern Illinois, like Mike Shanahan and Sean Payton and Tony Romo and a bunch of other greats. He's from that tree, and he's played excellent football. But the reason he's not on the 49ers is because he hasn't been reliable. The Raiders, arguably have less to lose. They haven't had a won the division since 2002, with Rich Gannon. So they can take a chance that he's going to play 16 healthy games, and for his sake, I hope he does. I hope he looks great, and the pessimism that has come from the Vegas market since the report of his injury, I think is probably, it probably should have been baked in that Jimmy G is going to be a question mark health wise going forward.
Well, I honestly think that he'll be okay this year. I think outside of like we were talking about Adams, we were talking about Jacobs. I'm not necessarily super high on the rest of the talent. There's Jacoby Myers there. You got Dorsett. You have DeAndre Carter. Like guys who have been in the league, guys that know how to go out there and play football and get into a playbook and go out there and go ahead and do whatever type of game plan that you guys are trying to do. They did bring in a pretty cool tight end, one of the kids from Notre Dame, Mike Mayer. I actually like him. I think actually he's a real talent, and Jimmy G might actually use him quite a bit. The Raiders' offensive line, I actually think it's like borderline top 10. I think they'll be able to go ahead and protect him. And this Raiders offense, I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be top 10, but I think it could be an offense that, goes in out there and they put up, 22, 23, 24 points per game on offense and they make teams work. That's kind of how I feel, about the offense overall. So let's talk about the defense here, Mac. I don't know if you want to go ahead and start out on the defense. I'm not high on this defense at all. I think it's projected to be bad. I think it will be probably bad. But if you got any thoughts on the defense, because I think that's their biggest liability. Like they're going to lose games this year because of the defense more than anything.
You ever see the movie Wall Street?
A couple times, yep.
It's all business. There's no dirty business and good business. It's all just dirty. It's all just business. Anyway, Raiders defense terrible. 31st in the league. Couldn't stop the run. Couldn't stop the pass. I would say their biggest. They got another defensive end to pair with Max Crosby, and usually pass rush carries over year to year. So if that's the best part of your defense, that's optimistic going forward. But I would just say the variance of the NFL is probably their best friend here, where they're not going to be that bad again. They have Patrick Graham or Graham, I'm not sure. Uh, I know he worked with Brian Flores in Miami. He's a former Patriots guy, as their new defensive coordinator. Um, Maybe just a different voice in the room probably regresses to the mean. If they're 16th on defense, then I'm optimistic the Raiders are very much going to exceed expectations.
If they're 16th, then yes, I'm with you. They'll certainly exceed expectations. I think the one area that they have to rely on is their pass rush. If they don't get a pass rush, they could potentially be in trouble because their back end isn't all that good. I mean, they have some like older names on that team, but there's a lot of young talent that just never develops. So it's going to be a work in progress. I think overall, I would say probably not a good defense. I mean, if they can go out there like you're saying there, Mac, and manage to go ahead and float somewhere, maybe in like that 16 to 20th range where it's just more of a bend and don't break type of defense. That's good enough to keep them in games and to let Jimmy G and Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and those guys go out there and try to do their thing. I think that they play a fair amount of inexperienced quarterbacks this year that are actually on some decent teams. So, maybe if the defense is a little bit better playing some inexperienced quarterbacks, maybe the defense could actually look a little bit better, play a little bit better, have a little bit more confidence.
You know why? Because you'll lose your job if you weren't cut already. If you're out of the league already, there's not a lot of guys that have a lot of years where they were 30th on defense. Usually, those guys just they do something else.
Completely true. I kind of think the Raiders. It's tough, man. Like if they win in week 1, I really think that they can go ahead and they can get over this total. I mean, it's only 6.5. If it goes to 7.5 there, Mac, in week 2, let's say they beat Denver in week 1. Do you think that this will go to 7.5 in week 2? Because it's like 6.5 with a lot of juice on the under. Or do you think it would just go to 6.5 with a lot of juice on the over? Because if it's 6.5 with juice on the over, I would probably go ahead and consider playing this team over after week 1. So I don't know how you feel about that. Would they move it an entire game or not?
So there's two factors. There's the actual win. How much more wins did you get out of that game than the market expected? So they're supposed to win about 36% of the time. So if they win, they get a whole 1-0. That would be plus, 0.65 wins to their win total. So you add that up. It's about 6.3 right now. It goes to 6.9 or 7. Then there's the other factor, and this is especially important in week 1. We have to upgrade them. they're a lot better. They're arguably, like, let's say they win 27-3 and they look dominant. They're a lot better than we thought. So you add a point of value to each of their games, and then maybe it gets up to 7.5 with some juice on the under. It could move that much because there's a lot of question marks with this team that they could answer in week one.
Well, if they do beat Denver in week one and it turns out to be 6.5 with some juice on the over, I'll go ahead. I'll take them over. I lean over already. I kind of do right now. I think Jimmy G and Devontae Adams and all those guys will be able to put points on the board. It's if that defense could turn into a bend and don't break defense where they're right around, like you said, like 16th. There should be no reason why they can't win 7 games. I think their home schedule is beneficial for them. I love the primetime games, 4 of them at home. I think there's a lot of opportunities for them to go ahead and win games that are going to be tough games that some people would pencil in as losses. Like I think that they'll go out there and they'll surprise some teams in some particular games. So it would be the over for me if I win anywhere.
Speaking of penciled in losses, and we're in the same place. I lean to the over, but with that week one matchup at Denver, I haven't fired on it. But their week 2 game is a penciled in loss. They're 8-point dogs at Buffalo, and teams that go 0-2 make the playoffs about 9% of the time. And with McDaniels never having made the playoffs or had a winning record, I think it could snowball the other way. So yeah, I do think it really it has to start out right for the Raiders to have a competitive year.
Yeah, and I think that the way that the schedule lines up, Mac, is there's a lot of games that could really crush this team's hopes and dreams on a week to week basis. Like if they go out and they're let's just say they're 1-2. Then they have to go on the road and play the Chargers. It could turn into 1-3, and then maybe they beat Green Bay. And like they have weird, the way the schedule's set up, it's like weird. Like they can get a couple wins in a row, but they have to get them in order to like the motivation is either going to snowball in one direction or the other. I think that's the easiest way for me to say it. So we'll see. So sounds like Mac and I kind of lean into the over a little bit here, but it seems like we're putting some pretty strong emphasis on week one. Mac, I like the Raiders in week one. I'm going to take them plus the 4 points. I don't know if you're on that same island with me, but right now I'm starting to sour on Denver and the news with Judy. I don't think it's good. And I don't know how they score. If they couldn't score points last year, how are they going to score points this year with no wide receiver core, with a new coach and all that? It seems tough.
I might mess around with a tease. I feel like that's a close game, but maybe plus 4.5. I mean, obviously it's not a key number or anything, so you know, uh, certain bettors would slap my hand at the mere suggestion. But I feel like that game's close. But Denver seems to edge those games at home in week one. They won by 3, 3, and 2 their last 3 home openers. So maybe plus 4.5 is enough. I definitely lean in that direction, but I haven't fired on it.
I might just take the Raiders on the money line and start out the year on a good note.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So that'll wrap up the Raiders. Again, if you guys have not followed along with all our NFL team previews, make sure you guys do that at pregame.com. Like, subscribe to all the podcasts. Go to our YouTube page. Go to the pregame.com forums. And Mackenzie has all these articles actually typed up for each and every team in the NFL in the news section. So if you guys are looking for NFL content, we have it right here at pregame.com. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We're going to have more NFL team previews for you. Hey guys, if you enjoy our content and want even more videos from pregame.com, hit that subscribe button right now. I promise you will not find better sports betting information anywhere else.